And welcome everyone to another episode of The Kuehl Show. I am your host today, the insider of the insiders, Tyler Kuehl. And yes, folks, as you can tell, it's not the office, it's not the studio. I am in Texas right now, getting set for the Under-18 IIHF World Hockey Championships. Really excited to be a part of it with Hockey TV. But you know what? As much as I have done my own personal studying for the event and whatnot, I needed some help today. We'll get to that here in just a second because we have to make sure, because once again, we are live here on 12-Ounce Sports on this special Sunday edition of TKS. 12-Ounce Sports down there in the corner, whether you're watching on Zingo TV, Channel 761, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. You're watching us here on 12-Ounce Sports. If you can't watch the full thing today, that's okay. Just make sure you check out the replay on the YouTube channel tomorrow, the Kuehl Show YouTube channel, or your favorite podcatcher as well. Also, we must thank our sponsors today, including MyBookie.ag. MyBookie, go on there. Lots of sports going on. Basketball playoffs are in sight. They can bet on NASCAR. You can bet on hockey. You can bet on baseball. That's in full swing. The Jays are playing well, which terrifies me for the second half of the season, but I digress. You can go on there, mybookie.ag, sign up using the promo code 12-Ounce Sports, win, and get paid on mybookie.ag. And, of course, as always, Second String Leather Company up there in the corner, Collection 8. It's out there now. Get out there. It's got awesome stuff from Razor Ray Emery's gear back when he was in Ottawa. Great stuff, great products there from Second String Leather Company, hashtag crafted from the crease. As I mentioned on today's show, guys, we're going to be talking a little bit about the upcoming Under-18 IIHF World Championships. Now, we haven't really done it before on this show in the past, and I get it. It's an event that only the upper 1% of hockey fans watch. Us, of course. And then again, if you're watching this program or listening, you are part of that 1%. So, with that, let's bring in our guest today. He's been here now a couple of times beforehand, and this is making his third appearance here on TKS. He's one of the writers for the Hockey News, one of the big guys covering the draft for that program, for that lovely news outlet that's been around for, ever? A long time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, Steven Ellis. Steven, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, man, it's interesting. I went from this morning 30 degrees and a little breezy, wearing sweater and sweatpants, and I was at the links today playing golf, and I was wearing t-shirt and shorts, polo, and it's about 77 degrees and sunny. So, yeah, a bit of a 180 here.
Yeah, we've had snow in the last few days. It's been 23 degrees Celsius. It's been kind of just cold, warm, cold, warm, cold, warm. I hate it because, I, like a lot of people, when the weather changes drastically, I get huge headaches. So having snow one day and shorts the next day, not my favorite.
See, I always joke about it. I laugh about it because I have to walk to work myself to the radio station I work at. And the crazy thing is the fact that I have to, there'll be one day I'll walk in t-shirt, shorts, flip-flops, the whole 9 yards. And then all of a sudden the next day I'm coming in bundled up looking like I'm getting ready for Christmas. I mean, that's what it's right now, both in Michigan and in Ontario as well.
Yeah, no thanks. Not a fan. Not a fan of this. I live by the water too, so you get the extra wind, you get the extra lake there, and downtown Toronto. So it's the good thing, I guess, in that case is we are completely locked down, so it's not like I have anywhere to go.
That is the craziest thing too, because a lot of people have gotten on edge about, and of course a lot of my folks up in Ontario, friends of mine, they're golfers as well up there, and they decided to shut down golfing up there, which to me was one of the few things we got to do here in Michigan during the pandemic, the first roundabout. So I'm like, well, you're taking like half of everyone's like stuff away if you take away golf.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not a golfer myself, so it never really affected me. But it's just like the hardest thing is I live a 2-minute walk away from Scotiabank Arena where the Toronto Maple Leafs play, and I haven't been there since March 10th, 2020. And it's just like you would see the Leaf players walk into the rink. It's like I want to go, and we're all kind of just stuck at home the way it is.
It's almost like those fans that were in Edmonton during the World Juniors, just watching the guys walk across the catwalk and just cheering them on every single time. You're doing great, Austin. You'll hit 50. No.
And they have to show it at every single broadcast, every single time. And it's just like, yeah, we know they're there, but you know what? They were passionate. I don't even know if they got to see much of the games because they were outside when they're showing those shots. But that was pretty cool.
Well, because does Rogers Place there, do they have like what they have at Maple Leaf Square, like a big board for people can watch? Or they probably would have told people to get out of there if they even tried.
I don't recall. Again, they wouldn't obviously want a lot of people being out there, but also December, January in Edmonton. Not sure that's a place I want to be anyway. So I think a lot of people would have just gone home as it is.
Oh, I'm sure those Alberta, they're probably hearing you say that. Like, we're hardy people up here in Alberta. We're used to the cold. The cold's nothing.
I lived out in Alberta for a little bit, and I could say I was not a fan of the cold, but I'm also hate the cold altogether. So there's that.
Well, wasn't it at some points like -30 out there or something ridiculous like that?
Yeah, I remember the first day I saw snow there, and it was like October 4th in 2018, and it's like, okay, this is a little ridiculous. This is not what I'm used to. And I got out of there before I got to experience my first real winter. So I guess I kind of lucked out there. But again, there's probably some Albertans who say you're a wimp, and sure, I'll say that.
That's what's still funny to look back at the first Heritage Classic back in 03 at Commonwealth. It was in late November after American Thanksgiving, and it was called, and literally the players, and it's still funny because Jeff Merrick likes to mention it quite often over there at Sportsnet. He says, it was the players came together, ref said and everything, and said, all right, this is going to be a no-hitter. Like, nobody wanted to hit each other because they didn't want to have to get up off the ice when it was that cold, because I think temperatures were part near, wind chill, -40 that game. Everyone thought Jose Taylor was wearing a toque for style. No, he was trying to stay warm.
Yeah, well, actually, I had a toque that similar to the one he wore that he actually signed in my family's house. But I've been to 2 outdoor games, 2 of the coldest experiences I've ever been a part of. No, thank you. I do not want to go back. The worst one was the Hamilton Bulldogs versus Toronto Marlies AHL outdoor game. But it was cool because I can't remember who the players were. And I'm pretty sure it was during a commercial break, but there were 2 players that fought off the ice because they got into a fight on the ice. But then there was the one exit to the change room, which, like all outdoor games, it's a long walk. Corey Perry knows all about that a couple years ago. Oh, yeah. And these 2 guys had to walk in the same little piece of, I don't know, mats or whatever you would say, and both had to walk together, and they got into a fight off the ice. And it was incredible, but it was so cold, and I feel bad for the Bulldogs players after because they got obliterated 7-2, and it was a home game. And fans after the game, there was a little catwalk over where the players. This is where the Hamilton Tiger Cats play. Yep. And there were some people right over the catwalk where the players were coming, pelting them with snowballs. I felt so bad for them because they played terrible. One of their players got beat up off the ice, and then they had snowballs thrown at them. And it was just a brutal, brutal day.
Well, Tim Hortons Field, and people know this, fans of the CFL, the 3 probably proudest fan bases are probably, the Rough Riders.
I think I would say there's 3 fans in the CFL, which I honestly would believe. But
well, I'll be honest with you. The folks that have come out when the XFL signed on with them, there's a lot of them. No, there's Rider Nation, the Sasky Rough Riders. I'd go Blue Bombers over Calgary, even though people will probably get mad at me for that. But also Hamilton Tiger Cats. As good as the Argos are, the Tiger Cat fan base, from what I've always heard, is much bigger. They'll drive up the 403 to go invade BMO Field whenever they play the Argos because they need to show that they're. I mean, it's fun. CFL football. Some people don't like it. I like it. I think it's fun. It's different. Maybe that's why I like it.
I'm not a football fan altogether, so I'm indifferent. But it's I remember being downtown Toronto around the time when the Argonauts won their last Grey Cup, and it was actually hard to find a lot of people who even knew that happened. But it's like I'm an IndyCar fan, and you could be downtown during the IndyCar race in the streets of Toronto and not have any clue what's happening. It's just that's just kind of the weird sports city we are.
It's crazy because we have events like when the Raptors won the championship. I was at the parade, not the rally.
I skipped it.
Well, I'll tell you, it's an experience that my wife says she'll never do it again, but she's glad. If my wife says she's glad she did it and that we did it together, then it's a good thing. It's a good thing we went. But I've done that. I've actually driven on when the barriers are driven, the track on for the Honda Indy track in Toronto. I've actually driven on with the walls up. And
yeah, I got to do that last year. It was a lot of fun.
It's so I didn't get to go on the front stretch across the finish line, but the way it was going down Lakeshore Drive there, I got to drive on it. I thought that was pretty neat. But my brother sitting in the car next to me, and he's like, "You're not gonna actually floor it, are you?" And I'm like, "No, maybe if I get enough room." But it's downtown Toronto traffic; can never get enough speed.
That's the thing. There was at Jukasa Motor Speedway, another short track out in Ontario. We before they brought that finalized the track and built it the way it is now for the NASCAR Pinty Series. I took my dad's pickup truck around. We were filming a video there for Can Race, and they're like, okay, go as fast as you want, just don't crash. And I'm going fast. I'm picking up. I used to go-kart race myself, so I understand how to race. And I hit like a bump that hadn't been like paved over yet, and I spun the whole thing around and looped it. I never told my dad that, so hopefully he's not watching. But I was pretty close to hitting that wall.
See, it's funny. The track I used to work at over here in West Michigan. I'm in Texas. At my home in West Michigan, in order to dry the track, you got to get a bunch of cars on the track to dry it. We don't have jet dryers because, unfortunately, small town tracks don't have that. So when you have like 30, and there was a big race one night, and everyone at this point, all the races were done, but everyone in the pits that's not racing is half in the bag. Everyone gets in their pickup trucks, and it was more what was going on with all these cars and trucks and random vehicles on the track was more exciting than the actual race that happened. And unfortunately, I was riding shotgun in one of them and doing live reporting while I was screaming at the top of my lungs that I thought we were going to hit somebody.
Yeah, last time I was at UCAS, actually, I did that same thing. It was pouring rain. It just like I've only been to that track 3 times, and it rained every single time. And the last time, it was like maybe 2.5 hours. People were just on the track driving, and I went out for a little bit and had some fun with that. There was another guy I knew who was with one of the teams, and we kind of unofficially raced because obviously there's a lot of cars going different speed. You got to be careful. We were trying to see who could do the most laps in a short period of time, and I didn't win. But again, I was driving a big pickup truck compared to a smaller car.
Well, those pickup trucks, they got the lifts and everything, and they got the heavy-duty diesel engines, and you can hear them coming from about 1.5 miles behind you. Isn't that how it works?
Yep, basically, essentially, yeah. So that was fun. But it's been a while since I've been to a racetrack. I went to the Daytona 500 last year, and that was a dream come true. And then I got to go to some like dirt race later in the summer. But otherwise, it's been way too long not being like going from like 10 to 12 races a year between Pinty, sports cars, and stuff like that to not going to anything kind of sucks. Especially when we've now got the word that the Pinty Series is already delayed for this season.
Right, and that's a tough one. Before we get to hockey, last auto question here. Short tracks. Are you a pavement or are you a dirt fan? What do you prefer?
I would say a pavement guy. I've started to kind of learn a bit about dirt. I actually got into a huge argument with I can't remember what you call it, Dirt Vision, I believe, on Twitter about like the pricing of streams. It's just dirt racing can be a sport that's really hard to get into because it's a barrier of entry to even watch can be a challenge.
Right.
But I think I'll say short track, short racing. I'm more of a sports car guy. I love the road courses. Like, get me to the Rolex 24. That'd be the greatest event I've ever been to. But I'd say probably the asphalt, just because I like bumping and running a bit more than a lot of the times when we see dirt tracks. But I don't mind going to dirt tracks, enjoy it, started to learn a bit more in the last couple of years. Kyle Larson, obviously I follow him, so he's a really good dirt guy, so it's kind of fun to watch. And Tony Stewart, my all-time favorite driver, is obviously a huge dirt guy, so I can't say I hate it. It's just I like bumping and running a bit more.
Yeah. Now, of course, Tony Stewart's starting his own racing thing now, it looks like, so he's staying active in the realm. Let's jump to the point of the actual interview here, the point of this hockey show, as we go into our racing tangent. Steven and I here. Steven Ellis of the Hockey News joining us.
Tony Stewart right here. So.
Wow. What is that, his Busch car?
Yeah, he ran a one-off, and then this is the one he did his 24 Hours Daytona when his axle broke with 19 minutes ago when he had a multi-lap lead, and you can actually see a couple more Tony diecast right there behind me. So.
Man, I have a few old ones. I have I forget the guy that drove the NHL Craftsman truck back in the 90s. I have that truck.
Oh, I don't remember that, actually.
Oh, look it up. Look up NHL NASCAR truck. It's a driver no one's ever heard of. I never heard of him, but it's a cool looking thing. It's back when they had their coolest game on ice mantra, which should tell you how old that is.
Quite old, yeah.
But then I have a couple other cool ones. Of course, Dale Earnhardt cars up the wazoo because he's the man. That's always been my favorite driver. But obviously, why we have you here, Steven, World Championships across the board going on right now. We're getting ready for the men's worlds over there in Riga, Latvia. Right now I'm down here, like I said, in Texas, Plano and Frisco for hosting the U18s. But let's get started on the big news that happened last week. The Women's World Championships up that were supposed to be in Nova Scotia, Halifax and Truro, get canceled. Now, the thing is, the first reaction is everyone, and I have a lot of folks that cover both the men's and women's game, and everyone should be mad that this is not happening in a couple weeks. But I think the first reaction, Steven, you were on the call, of course. This was, I think, a misconstrued, at least at first, a misconstrued news break because everyone was pointing at this was the IIHF calling the women's tournament. Why are you calling the women's but not the men's? This was something from the local government of Nova Scotia, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. That's a misconception. Misconception is, it's while the IIHF is the league that's sanctioning it, it's the host's job to organize the tournament. It's not like, in this case, this tournament was awarded to Hockey Canada, so it's not like they could have just simply moved the tournament 3 weeks from now or 4 weeks from now to Texas, because that's a USA hockey tournament all of a sudden.
Yep.
And so that becomes a challenge. And I know a lot of people saying, like, well, why did the men's tournaments get canceled, especially after the women's tournament got canceled, the U18s. Now, for that one, it was no one was willing to put the costs to make that tournament work, because there are a lot of costs to try to make up for it, whether it be a lack of fans, a lack of being able to do different activations, and usually the host city is helping to pay for the travel for the team. So there's a lot of that, and it's expensive to put on a tournament. So when you're getting no return, which in international tournaments, you don't always get sellout crowds, especially on the women's side, unfortunately. So someone's got to put the money up. So that tournament was canceled. There were a lot more cases at the time. Nova Scotia was a place where Hockey Canada said it. There was no reason to have a backup, because literally the day before the tournament got canceled, there was no outbreak. But the next morning, numbers came in and there's an outbreak. And the next day would have been tough for them to cancel, or even a day after, because the day they canceled, which I believe was Wednesday, all the teams were supposed to show up on Thursday. And you can't all of a sudden cancel it that morning. That becomes a challenge, especially for the European teams. So there was, it was a tough situation to be in, but I don't think there was a better option, because Nova Scotia, they're a smaller place. I think at the time we were talking like they were like 9 or 10 new cases, but that was a big spike over there compared to what you see in Ontario, where it's completely shut down as it is. So any big spike increase, in which we've seen in the last few days, they continue to get more. They're in a bigger lockdown. It was going to happen regardless. It's just a shame it happened to that tournament. If the tournament was in the States to begin with, if it was in Texas, that's fine. But at the same time, we got to remember that the tournament in Texas did move. It wasn't like that was always planned to be there. So they had to make concessions to make that happen. It was supposed to be in Michigan. It moved, and it is what it is. But you look at one tournament in Latvia where they don't have the same issue. The other tournaments in Texas where the rules have always been a little bit more lax in terms of COVID. So it's just kind of poor timing. It sucks, and I don't think anyone wanted it to be the case. But the day they announced it, they found out that morning it was not happening. And it wasn't Hockey Canada's call, and it definitely wasn't the IIHF's call.
That's the one thing that there were a lot of people, and of course there were the people that came out and say, well, of course that women's game got the very simple-minded folks, Steven, that said, of course women's got canned, because why would anyone want to watch women's hockey? I'm like, listen here, Grandpa, sit off to the side. Because that may have been the best no offense to the kids down here in Texas, to all the guys that are playing over in Latvia, there was a lot going into that women's hockey tournament. I mean, U.S. was going on to extend their streak of gold medals in that tournament. Canada, despite having, the pro women's hockey players only playing for so many, the Players Association only playing so many games, if any, they were going to come out and try to put in a good effort. But then you had the players from overseas, the Swedes, the Finns, that had already been playing a whole season, and they were going to be fresh and ready. It was going to be a wide open tournament for the most part, Steven.
This would have been the year where, there may have been the most competition we've seen, and a lot of it's just because there's so many unknowns. Unlike where in what we've seen in North America, a lot of those guys were going over to play Europe instead of playing in junior leagues or whatever, and there was those options. You don't get that in women's hockey, but there were the European leagues that were running full bore. You don't get that in North America. So it would have been an interesting situation. Obviously, the NWHL, not a lot of those players would have been in the Olympic or in this World Championship tournament for Canada and USA, but those players that are playing in the Dream Gap Tour, they've had events canceled. It's been kind of a rough time overall. So it would have been a good tournament. And obviously it doesn't look good. And the Hockey Canada says, optics wise, it definitely doesn't look good when the one event getting canceled is the women's tournament, given the last year was canceled too. But it's just, again, if this tournament somewhere else, I think we're talking a different story. It's a tough situation. I feel horrible for the players, but at the same time, it would have been even bigger hoopla if they canceled a week before, which gave them more time for the players. If they moved the week before, it'd been like, well, we're looking at like 2 to 3 new cases a day. Why would we cancel a tournament because of that? And then if you cancel later, then the teams have already traveled over. They now have to quarantine before they can go home. It just wasn't simple to move this event. It was just not simple to do anything else. It just sucks. It hurts. It was going to be a lot of fun. I was looking forward to it. And now we're hoping that this tournament does happen in the summer. There are rumors of it happening in different places, potentially Florida, Texas. But at the same time, it's just you couldn't just bolt this to the end of where the other tournament was, because the under-18s, because there's a lot of travel you'd have to change, a lot of different quarantine rules, different costs behind it. You also got to make sure you can retain all the employees and all the volunteers that are involved there. It's just not so simple. So there were people that were like tweeting at USA Hockey when they were tweeting the U18 game yesterday and saying like, why are you tweeting about this? It's so tone deaf. I think that's a little ridiculous, given it's like, you know what? Again, well, the only group that said we have to end this was a government agency. That's a little different than a hockey hockey company, because of all the work that goes into it, they don't want to cancel it.
Right.
They were forced to.
Yeah, that's I think the big thing that people realize, and that's why I think eventually it kind of came to. And then you saw the players start to come out from U.S. and Canada say this should happen still. Do you have any idea when that tournament would be, or is there a guesstimation? Because obviously it was supposed to start May 4th, right? May 4th? Yeah.
Yeah. So May 4th, May 6th, I believe. It was supposed to be the same day as the gold medal games for the U18s.
Right.
If I'm correct.
So
yeah, it was that the date that has been thrown around a bit is August 22nd as a potential day as to where that could be. Obviously, Texas will want to be one of the groups involved, given they are hosting a tournament right now, and as they continue to try to be a place that's big for hockey, this would be a good opportunity for them to get the event. It doesn't look like we're going to see this in Canada, regardless. It should be in the United States. And if you look at Texas and Florida, the two that are mentioned a lot in the rumor mill, and those are the ones where they've got a little more lax COVID regulations, so they could easily put those both on. But again, you got to be really careful on all this. We're still in a global pandemic. August, the hope is that pretty much most of the people involved in the tournament will be vaccinated. But obviously, you've got a lot of Canadians who are still waiting in various places. I don't know when I'm going to get my own vaccine, for example. So I'm the only one in my family without one at this point. So there's, it's going to be a tough one, but it does look like we're going to be looking at August. The thing to keep in mind is in mid-September, around September 15th, is when the centralization begins for some of these programs, specifically Hockey Canada. That they want this done before that, because that's what's so important. They got to start focusing on that, and they got to put their full plan together for that. So that'll be interesting to see if it happens at the end of August.
Because then, of course, Steven, it's an Olympic year. You don't want to go too late, because all of a sudden you're going to the World Championships, because in women's hockey, the Olympic gold medal, the Olympics are their World Championships that year for that 2021 or 2022. So you're going to be going literally from World Championships, if you don't go if you go later than August for some reason, you're going literally from back-to-back World Championships. We mentioned with the Indy 500 going from fans and a few months later to fans. Same thing with the Masters. Now all of a sudden we're going, it's same thing with this hockey tournament. Maybe a few more teams added, of course, compared to the World Championships, but regardless, it's going to be that similar concept. That's why they almost have to do it by August.
And you also do have to be concerned about, there's been rumors and some reports that, what if the major countries boycott the 2022 Olympics, and not specifically just the hockey teams. Like, we're talking like Canada, United States all together, based off of going to China, which obviously there's a lot of things going on there. So that is something to keep in mind on too. I was always wondering is, would there be, I know there's never been the World Championships in the same year as the Olympics, but given that there's a chance that we could see it not in 2020, not in 2021, and not in 2022, we also forgot that in 2018 they didn't have it. So that would mean between 2019 and 2022 would happen one time. I do wonder if they would put a second tournament. You never know. Like, make the World Championship happen. That is something that I know has been rumored. I don't think we'll see that, but I would be interested to see if that happens, especially if there is a true threat that the World Champion or the Olympics do not happen, and the teams don't go to China. Then you got to think, okay, would this actually happen? And it's not like if they decide in January to not go into the tournament or to the Olympics and it's not happening, it's not like they would have time to get ready for May. That is not a big enough window to prepare for a tournament that size. So it's tough.
Now, this is kind of just the wild open, wide-eyed Tyler kind of thinking here. You mentioned how if the women's tournament moves into Texas or Florida, it would become a USA Hockey tournament. Is there any way for the tournament to move into the States, maybe not down south, maybe to like Buffalo, where there is a Canadian fan base, because it's so close to the border? Would there be a possibility or any way that it could be a Hockey Canada tournament while in a nearby area in the United States?
I don't think so, and I also don't think I think Hockey Canada in that case would rather just give the tournament up for this year and then get it maybe back in Halifax for the next year. I don't know if there's a 2023 plan yet, so that would maybe give them a chance to get full fans the year after the Olympics, and you can use that as promotions. Like, see the players over at the Olympics a year ago, now they're back, and it'd be the first World Championship in years, so they might be able to get a bit of hype into that. So I think in this case, Hockey Canada would just rather give it off, and USA Hockey. If you're holding this at the end of August, maybe you're seeing fans depending on where it is. But I don't think we'll see it in the Hockey Canada, because there's no value to them if they can't get fans there.
Yeah, it would have to be in Texas, because in Michigan, I was doing the ACHA Division III Nationals, and we were literally one phone call away 2 days before the tournament that we were going to possibly be canceled. Like, we're sitting there, I'm like, are we actually going to play on Thursday? Yes, we are. Thank goodness. I know there's a reason why we had tournaments in North Dakota, because there's also lackadaisical rules out there with COVID. So it all remains to be foreseen. Hopefully we have this tournament, because I was excited for it. I know a lot of people out there were, because this tournament, I don't say it needs to happen, but it should happen. And I'm pretty sure you can agree with that too, Steven.
Yeah, no, I want it to happen. I want everyone involved to be able to experience this. Having a chance to play for your country is something that you never take for granted. You never know if you're ever going to get it again. You want to be there. So for women's hockey, it's been dealt so many blows after blow after blow ever since the CWHL shut down. For everyone's sake, I do hope we get to see this. But again, it's not as simple as just picking a new date, picking a new location. It's a much bigger challenge than that.
So let's hope it happens. But let's get to one of the tournaments that is going to happen, the U18s. Big tournament. This is pretty much, for a lot of these kids, an opportunity to really bump up their draft status. And for a few kids, as we'll mention here, a couple 16-year-olds and even a 15-year-old, an opportunity to show people that they can hang with some of the best in the world that are not even in their age group. We'll start in we'll say Group B, but the way it's all being treated here in Texas, it's the A team, the A group. They're getting the big rink there at Comerica Center over in Frisco. That's the pool that sees U.S., Russia, Finland, and the Czechs and Germany. And Germany, Steven, you and I kind of discussed it. There's a lot of unknowns with this team. We don't really know what to expect out of them coming into this tournament.
Yeah, this is a team where I'm not like we knew in the past, when you look at the talent of the guys like Stützle and Peterka and guys like that, Reichel, those were really solid teams coming up. For Germany, I don't think, like, if we were being fully honest with ourselves, I think a team like Slovakia would have been a better team for this year. Obviously, it's not how that works because of the tournament being canceled last year. So this is not a group that I'm totally thrilled about. There's a couple guys that the one a lot of people have kind of mentioned as someone to keep an eye on is actually, I'm trying to figure his name out, Robin van Kalster, a centerman who's a guy that is a pretty good skater, good shot, and played some pretty good games in the German U20 league. But overall, this is just not a group I'm totally just thrilled about, and there's not a lot of highlights to it. I don't think there's anyone who's going to really take this team far, and we're looking kind of at a last place position here.
And it's really tough too, because the Czechs will be a competitive team, but when you're going up against the United States and Russia and Finland, and that's why I look at this as maybe the A group, because it's the toughest group in this tournament so far.
Yeah, but being able to win this group is going to be tough. And again, it's kind of just all about survival, the way it's looking for Germany. It's a strong group, and you got USA, Russia, Finland as the big three. And even the Czech Republic aren't necessarily slouches here either. I still think there's I would love to say like 2 days ago, there was a clear number one of who this Group B top team is. I don't think there is necessarily anymore, but this is one where it's probably going to have some more competitive hockey, especially when you look at like Canada's got to play Latvia, Belarus, and Switzerland, and none of those teams really have a chance. So it'd be interesting to see how this one kind of really plays out. Germany can be a rough one.
You know, my family, I got German in my blood, and so I'm like, maybe they win one. So trust me, I was cheering for Germany in 2018 over in Pyeongchang. I don't think they'll have the same kind of luck here in this tournament. But let's look at the Czechs, though. I mean, they're probably their top guy, according to the Hockey News previous draft ranking, Stanislav Svozil. Holy moly. This is going to be a long tournament for me if I can't say these guys' names right. 35th in the THN rankings, a really good defenseman, plays for Komota Brno over there in the Czech Republic. You know, you mentioned how they have some, you know, some depth, some age, but also a couple of younger guys as well. David Spacek, Jakub Sadivi, the captain of this Czech Republic team. What makes this team a team that could possibly stand out?
Well, this team has played a lot together, which is nice. They played a lot of games against Slovakia. So this is a group where, there's nothing too incredible on them. They got a really good defenseman in Stanislav Svozil. If this team steals a couple of games, we could be talking as one of the top defensemen overall in this tournament, in a tournament that it's got a pretty good defensive side to it. So overall, actually, I'd say their blue line's pretty solid. They did a really good job of shutting down Slovakia in a couple of those games. And meanwhile, Slovakia is not in this tournament, but I would say Slovakia's got the better talent. So it was like they actually had some solid teams to play with. They also have one of the best names of the tournament, Marcel.
I was just about to say his name too. I'm like, that's the best.
Not to be confused with Ivan in the past, which if you look at that, it's like, man, the Czech Republic, our name's expensive over there. So I would like to see what their goalie situation is going to be. I know two names that people are really excited about are Thomas Suchanek, who actually has played a lot of games in the Czech U20 league or Czech second league. It looks pretty good. And then the other one actually being Patrick Hermela, which talking to Ryan Kennedy, I should know, I work with him. He was the guy that he actually pinpointed as the guy that he really wanted to watch. So Czech Republic, I always say watch their goaltending. That's never the reason why the team loses, and often will be one of the biggest strengths. And I think that's the case for them. I don't think the Czechs have like a number one guy that's going to be able to take this team far offensively, but they play well enough in their own zone where they might be able to grind out a win against Finland, but it's still going to be a tough one.
Yeah, the Czechs, for some reason, whether it be Mrazek or Vokun before that or Hasek before that, they always seem to pull out a really good goaltender every so often. It just changes the game for a while, or at least especially in certain tournaments. And it's funny because then they go to be household names in the NHL right after. I mean, it's funny how that works.
Yeah, the one like Dano Vladar, well, we'll obviously see him in Boston, and he's kind of fallen out of favor in terms of their future number one situation there. But he was one where you could tell there was something really good about him for a long time. Another one being Nick Malik, who a year ago we were talking about potentially, let's say, heading into the last draft class, he was maybe a first round talent. And he didn't even get drafted in the end. So the Czech Republic will get these guys who will play really well in international tournaments. Some will go out to be pretty good, and the Czechs have developed at least one good goalie every 5 to 10 years, where their international team can, if they get that goalie, will look pretty solid. I don't know if we're going to get that this year's Czech team, but I think that they're definitely not the weaker group or weaker goaltending situation here. So we'll see how that goes.
And a country that seems to pull out a lot of good goaltenders, whether it be just the way they've adopted their goaltending method, how they train goaltenders, like guys like Rask, Rene, so many before that. Of course, Kiprasov and Kari Lehtinen was good for a few years. Finland, they are people are predicting them to finish third in this group, possibly. They have a couple of really good players, most notably Samu Tumala plays over in Karpat for Liga. But there's a couple other guys as well that also play in that league as well. Brad Lambert as well. He steps up there. A couple good defensemen that play in the top league there in Finland. This is a very unique group. A lot of guys that play in the under-20 league over there. But like I said, a couple guys that have played and have had experience playing against the top in that Finnish top league.
Yeah, that's the thing that's nice about Finland is you get those guys who will play in the top league, and I don't necessarily take their stats too much into consideration because a lot of these guys will play sometimes under 5 minutes a game. But for defensemen, I think that you're getting thrown to the wolves in a way that's it's really tough, especially when you look at like we're still talking about, well, a lot of these Finnish teams will have 7-8 defensemen in the lineup in a single game. They're still having, there's not as many lineup spots there. So if you're there, like you've got to play well, because it's a tough thing to crack. But Brad Lambert's going to be the guy everyone's going to watch. He's part of the big three-headed monster for the 2022 draft, being Shane Wright, who played for Team Canada, Matt Savoy, who will not be there for Canada, and then Brad Lambert, who is part Canadian, but he's mostly Finnish, so that's why his name is the way it is. And it's
a pretty
funny
simple name. That's not Finnish at all.
I know, when you look at the guys he's playing with, like Ville Koivunen and Mikko Mataka, and then Brad Lambert. Wait a minute, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
That can't be on the right. That's the wrong roster.
Yeah, it almost looks wrong, but he's kind of like the best way I could explain Brad Lambert is, if you like Nathan MacKinnon, you like Brad Lambert, and Nathan MacKinnon's a pretty darn good hockey player. So
I've never heard of him.
Lambert, I would argue, if he was available for the 2021 draft, would go first overall, and he's younger than everybody else. So it's nice we get to see him there. It feels like he's been on the radar for a while, but he's only 17 years old, and but he's late 2003, so he's not like that super young that we usually see in this tournament. And actually, this is the only year he could play in the tournament. But he's just he dominates the puck control when he gets it. And that's what makes him so fun to watch. Finland just finds a way to grind out games, though. Finland's also played some games together as a group. Some of these guys have played the U20 team already. So they'll grind away wins. They don't necessarily need to be winning each game 4 or 5-0. They'll win a game 2-0, and they'll look like the significantly better team. That's just kind of their style, no matter what tournament they play in.
The craziest thing, because I've obviously done a lot of research on my group, is a lot of these international teams. These kids play together a lot in the U16 levels up through the ranks. So even when they go off and play for different club teams, play in Liga or U20 or even in the Swedish Elite League or the Allsvenskan League, they all somehow play international tournaments together. So it's not like this is their first rodeo together. And similar to Canada as well, but you see it more, Steven, overseas in Europe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Canada, like they do play in the U17 World Challenge, and that's the first time a lot of these guys will play together. But they split the talent up into 3 teams. So it's kind of watered down. You'll get guys who will never play Hockey Canada system ever again that are playing key minutes, and that's just kind of how that works. But like the U16 level in like Canada being like minor midget, or now it's just called U16, and those guys are all playing in different leagues, and it's so spread out, so they don't really get that opportunity. While you look at these guys playing in Europe, and some of them are signed to pro level or pro development contracts at a young age and are already playing in the systems by the time they go play in this U16 level. And usually we're talking like 14 tournaments, and there aren't a lot of them all together. But a lot of these guys on Russia, Sweden, Finland, Czech Republic, even Switzerland, they'll play together a lot, and that helps. And the U.S. national development team, obviously, they stay together for 2 years, and they're the ones playing at these tournaments. Latvia, kind of the same thing when they're in the top level. They've got essentially their Ishkariga program. So things like that, it's kind of nice that they can stay together. Canada doesn't have a similar thing. I've been kind of asking through scouts and stuff like that if they would like to see an idea like that in Canada. A lot of them will say yes. It's just how can you do it in a way where it doesn't step on Hockey Canada's toes if they're not doing it themselves, and if they do, how do they not piss off all the member clubs by stealing all the talent away, which in large takes away some fan support. So it's kind of a tough situation, but something I would love Hockey Canada to do in the future.
It would also take, and we'll get to a little bit with Canada later on, but it would also take a lot of the younger kids away from the OHLs, the WHLs, and the QMJHLs. So if that were the case, if there was a Canadian national development team, Shane Wright would not be playing for Kingston. Connor Bedard probably wouldn't be playing for Regina, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. When you look at the big thing with the AHL not being allowed to take these junior prospects away in a normal year, is you bring, if Quinton Byfield is not in Sudbury and Sudbury is struggling, it's not as big of attendance. If you have Quinton Byfield there, they're playing well, and then they go into like Mississauga, which never gets a good attendance, all of a sudden people are flocking to Mississauga when Quinton Byfield and Sudbury show up to town, and that helps that in a big way. So having those star players there is important. My solution to that was you make it only the U16 and U17 levels, and you play them against junior A teams and see how that works. You go send them BCHL, the AJHL, which obviously right now the BCHL is not part of Hockey Canada anymore. But if you were in theory to send against those teams, and you get these guys playing into a little competition at a young age, and then you either like you put them back in major, junior, or whatnot for the final year, I think you would get a really good talented group and potential for an extra year or two for guys who are more fringe players to get a chance to play. But there's no perfect system. USA Hockey, the way they do it, definitely there's a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of people who don't love it the way it is, the way it's been done. But the simple fact is it's always a competitive program, and they're clearly doing something right. Now, if they could translate that into success at the men's world championship, that'd be interesting, because it seems like they care so much about the junior levels. They get to the men's championship and they forget that exists, and they are sending like a C tier team, and then nothing ever works in their favor.
Well, I mean, this year it's going to be tough without NHLers going there. But I'll say this. If you're going to make like a U16 and play like the junior A team, set them up to play the NOJ teams up in the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League. Where scores are 10-9, 9-8 every other night. Going back over here to Group B, Russia is a team. We'll get to the Americans here in just a minute, folks. The Russian team doesn't have the, I don't want to say the glitz and glamour of the draft rankings yet. Central Scouting hasn't put out theirs. The NHL hasn't done theirs yet. But they have a lot of great talent once again, Steven. Fyodor Shvechkov, he's in the top 12. He's 12 in the Hockey News ranks. Nikita Chabrikov is another guy that's up there as well. And, I mean, this is pretty much the MHL All-Stars, but that's pretty much what this Russian program is at the U18 level.
Yeah, I had an NHL scout that basically, because I was on another show, and I said I didn't include Russia as one of the teams I was really too excited about. But, man, this team is, I don't know what to think about them. They've got their good players. They've got this Svechkov. They got Chabrikov. They got Yurov. But I don't, like, it's such a stereotypical Russian team where they've got some offensive guys who I don't know if I love them in their own zone. They've got a pretty average defense core. Their goaltending is a bit of a I'm not totally sure. I'm convinced on that. Russia has found a way to consistently disappoint me in international tournaments when I predict them to do well, and I'm not predicting them to be a top, maybe a third place team, maybe a fourth place team, depending on how kind of like Sweden and Canada kind of figure their things out in the round robin. But I'm not totally sure. I'm totally convinced about this team. It's a skilled team, fast team. These guys have played well together. There's no guy that Vasily Podkolzin are ready to take this team up, and I think that could offer some good opportunities. I'm a big fan of Svechkov. I think he's a very talented player. I think Chabrikov is actually one of the better defensive wingers in this team. I'm just not sure I love a guy enough on that team to say he's going to be the guy that takes this team far, and that's my concern.
I will say this: if you're terrified of picking Russia, you must have been on the Askarov train then in the World Juniors, weren't you? Getting all excited for the righty catching goaltender.
I've been a fan of his for years, and the thing about him, it's like you look at the World Juniors, and yeah, he didn't play well, but like that was the first. I'm not even going to necessarily count his World Juniors the year before, because I never thought he should have been the starting goalie to begin with. I didn't think he was the best goalie they had, and in the end, he wasn't the starting goalie. But this year's tournament just felt so off. And from talking to players that know him well, even talking to Nikolai Habibulin, who's been his goalie coach for points, just trying to get their opinions on that. And they're like, he just didn't look like he was in the right mindset, because this is the guy that usually is so mentally strong. The comparisons to Carey Price were so, like, it's been for years we've been hearing that, and there are real reasons for that, because he's so mentally strong. It just didn't look like he was playing as good as he could have been. Obviously, and the numbers didn't work out, but I still am feeling he's one of the best goalie prospects we've seen in 15 years.
Oh, my buddy Peyton Turner just decided to hear that. He's Nashville's problem now. No. But I think the big kahuna in this group, and probably the big kahuna in this tournament, then again, they are the hosts, the United States. The U.S. National Development Program, U17 / mostly U18 players. I mean, look at this roster. Luke Hughes, Chaz Lucius, Sean Barron, Sasha Pasajov, Tyler Boucher. I mean, this is a deep team from top to bottom, filled with draft-eligible guys and young guys on the U17 program that are just trying to make their name. Are they the favorite to win it again, is the question, Steven?
Well, I would have said yes a week ago, but now Chaz Lucius is not going to be playing.
Oh, he's not. Oh,
and Luke Hughes is actually out for the season. So both of those guys.
Darn it, IIHF. They gave me the wrong roster. That's what was on my roster. That's why I was like, oh wow.
So Lucius was reported by I want to say it was Chris Peters like yesterday, like late yesterday, that he wasn't going to be playing in this tournament. So it was pretty quick. It was pretty quick as to when that happened. So
IIHF, you're okay with me.
So he was on the initial roster up until yesterday, and they also lose Andre Gassot and Jacob Martin. This team, I still think, is going to be fantastic. I think that I still have them actually playing for gold. I just now no longer have them being the gold favorite for me anymore. And we'll get to that when I get to talk about that team. This is a team that's, when they lost Luke Hughes, Sean Behrens really had to show up, play a really good game. Roman Schmidt, a guy from the Don Mills Flyers era that was totally dominant, he started to step up. Ty Gallagher, I like him. Aiden Heshruk. It's a good defensive group. Obviously, their offense is not a problem for them. The fact that the 04s they brought, Logan Cooley, Merrick Hayduke, Isaac Howard's a pretty solid player, but Rutger McGroarty, I don't know if I've ever seen a prospect as dominant as he was at the U16 level in the United States. I think he had like 82 goals in his minor midget season, which is just outstanding. So this is a team that should be very, very strong. I just don't know if I have them as my number one, and part of that is their goaltending situation. Gibson Homer's been their guy. I don't love him as a goalie, to be fully honest. I don't think.
I've watched him against Muskegon a couple times over here. Once again, I'm in Texas, Tyler, but in the USHL games, and I'm just like, he's good, but you can tell he's got talent, but it's like he needs more time, I guess, is the big thing.
If I had to say how many NHL games I truly believe he'll play, I'm going to go on 0. But Bagel. I do think will he be good enough for this tournament? That's the important question here. Was he good enough for this tournament? Yes, I think he'll be good. I don't know if he'll be the game-saving guy. At the other hand, he's played a ton of games this year, something that the team I picked to win this tournament, that's not something their goalies have had this year. So I will say that he really needs to be pretty solid, and he has that tendency to go out there and have these big games, but he's allowed a lot of goals in the last few games ever since they won 9-0 in late March. He's had some rough games kind of along the way, so he needs to go out there and steal the games. But again, we're still talking about a team that plays together all year. They've been together for a couple of years now, and they always do so well at this tournament. So I really don't have any concerns about them.
Yeah. Let's jump over to Group A, because Steven mentioned he doesn't have the goal favorite to be the United States. Let's get to his goal favorite, Belarus. That's who his goal favorite.
All right, perfect. All right, yeah, easy.
Belarus, okay, I was, first of all, when I got ready for this tournament, I forgot that they're still in the top division. For some reason, Belarus, they can't do it at the U20 level. They sometimes do it in the World Championship level, the top men's level, but they seemingly always consistently are there in the U18 level. It just doesn't make sense to me. But they do have a couple good players, though. Nikita Tarasevic, he's going to go to Michigan State. He was a Little Caesars product, actually. He was kind of a player that's been brought up to the American system. But then you also have a guy like Igor Klavdiev, who has played for Cedar Rapids before going back home to Belarus. Cedar Rapids at the USHL, I should add. And they also have Igor Golubev, who is in the St. Petersburg system, as well as Ilya Gavrilov. So they have a couple of good defenders, a couple of good forwards, but once again, it's a lack of depth that's going to be the Belarusians' problem.
I think the one thing that's going to excite them and why I think they might be able to beat a team like Latvia and maybe Switzerland is because I think they got the best goalie of those three teams. That's Ivan Zhigalov, a goalie that a lot of scouts are really a fan of. There's a lot of similarities between him and Jesper Wallstad, who is the top goalie for the NHL draft this year. Obviously, in a little less scale, he's playing in Belarus as opposed to playing men's pro in Sweden. But I think that he's a guy that he's got really good size. He moves so well, so relaxed, really calm. And some scouts that I've talked to love the guy. Others have never heard of him, which, when you're that split, it's either he's good or
Belarus.
It's either he's good or you don't know who he is. That's always interesting. Jakar Polshkov was a top scorer of the U18 team. A good playmaker, skates well. No real draft height, pretty small, easy to take the puck off of. But when gets moving, he's got the speed, he's got the shot. Miroslav Mikulov, someone who I think has got some good talent, and Dmitry Kruzman, the defenseman. So not a great team, but they might be able to hang with some of the underdogs there.
It could be fun to watch. You mentioned the team that they may be able to beat, which is usually a team that's usually the team that may beat the Russians or may beat the Finns. That's Switzerland. And Switzerland, they have a couple of guys. I mean, this is another type of scenario where a lot of these guys play together. A lot of guys that play in the under-20 league. You have Lorenzo Canicoa. I think it's Canicoa. I hope I said that right. Gosh, I should have looked these up before. I'll look them up before I do games tomorrow. God, I probably should. Don't want to be like John Butchergross during the national championships. I didn't say that. Lorenzo Canico plays for Shawinigan in the Quebec League. Left the team before so he can come do the tournament because obviously we'll get to Canada. Quebec's not letting their players go because they want to have a playoff. Isn't that going to be great, Steven? Attila Biasca is another one. Plays in Halifax. So maybe not as good of a team as they've had in past in terms of high-end talent, but they have certainly some good players.
Well, Nana McKinnon is kind of a disappointment, and I believe it's because he's put the QMJHL and they're not allowing a lot of players as it is, which is a huge loss because I think that guy would have been the big difference maker. He would have been like the Nico Hischier of this team. But this will be a team that kind of in typical Swiss fashion, how are you guys going to score? I would be truly curious about that. I like Biasca a lot. I think he's a pretty solid prospect and does deserve his NHL hype. As opposed to the defensemen, very small defensive group. There's a couple 5'7" guys on this team.
Oh, yeah.
So
Buck 45 kids, yeah. Fabio Mira is one of them.
I don't know what is a Swiss. It's just like I think their average height has to be below 6 foot. They're not a big team at all. No. And who their goaltending is going to be, from talking to some Swiss scouts, I don't think anyone's confident in any of the options they have. So this is going to be a bit of a tough one. But, a lot of these guys have played together in previous international tournaments, and you can never fully discount that. I still think that they got a good shot at third place just because the talent level in the Swiss junior leagues, I would say, is better than Latvia. But it's still going to be a bit of a grind for them. And I would not be totally thrilled about any of their options. The one thing I'll say is they are a fast team, and while they don't have a lot of big stars in this team, I think they might have some solid depth here. And that's something I'd say, like, they got guys who the speed's going to really help here. And I think that'll be interesting to see how they kind of find their goals. But there's a lot of opportunities for guys to really shine because this is not a really super strong year for Swiss prospects. So there's going to be some guys that are going to try to fight to get some attention.
It's really funny because you talk about maybe the lack of talent in Switzerland. Here is my spot charts for Sweden. I'll put them right up here. Here's the front side. You guys can see it. Full page and a couple up top on the back. Switzerland is bringing an army. Here's the front page, and then the entire back page has players. They're bringing 38 guys. They've got to have someone that's got to score, right?
You hope so.
Jeez. I really saw that. It was the last team I did prep for. I'm like, there's just nothing going on. I'm like, and there's some players that stand out, but it's a lot of the same guys. They all play U16s, have decent numbers with the international team. Let's get a Trey Conair, though. We'll jump to Latvia in between Canada here. Trey Conair here, they have it's another great team. And it's looking like a Sweden-Canada top two in this pool. I mean, Simon Edvinsson and William Eklund, Fabian Lysel, Simon Robertson, William Stromgren. And these are guys that are playing in the top league over there. Obviously, Stromgren Moto is playing in Allsvenskan, but the top pools of Swedish hockey, these guys are playing in it. And that's what makes them just that much better than other teams in their group because they're playing against guys that are men, guys that have played in the NHL and stuff like that.
So this is a Swedish team that's played recently against the U19 team. Quite solid. Big fan of Fabian Lysel. I think he's going to be a fantastic prospect. I've seen a few tweets where people are like, you're sleeping on him. You got to be talking about him more if you're a fan of prospects. But I think he's almost going to get overrated because of that. Robertson's a very good winger, very talented two-way player. Dorwin Nielsen's I feel like we've been talking about him for years, but it's just because in Sweden you play internationally at a couple different levels, so you start to hear the names. The guy obviously a lot of people are really excited for is Simon Edvinsson. The defenseman is going to be really good. Actually, I'd say this whole team defensively is this is another team that's like, yeah, this is a typical Sweden team. You got some really good wingers. The centers can hold their own. Defensively, you're going to be really happy with the team. Not sure the goaltending side of things are going to be the same. Lindblom is one that I know a lot of scouts are definitely talking about. But this is a group that's going to speed's kind of the name of their game. I'd say way more fact than Switzerland because Sweden's just a better team overall.
Yeah.
And the wingers, there's just not a lot of weak points on this team. So it's a group that when playing the U19 team looks solid. I'm a fan of this team. But there's a reason you put Latvia as the team to talk about afterwards because you think they're going to be number one.
They are totally going to be number one with guys, names. Like there were a couple names that were in there that I literally said, I'm like, all right, these are literally guys that if you sim through a dynasty mode or a BGM mode for 5 years, all of a sudden they show up on your roster. Like, and this is nothing against Latvia. Listen, Latvia is a hockey country. They love hockey there. I think that some people don't quite realize, because they don't win gold medals, it means they must suck and they don't care about hockey. They do. They're just not as good as their surrounding neighbors like Russia and Sweden and Germany. So, but I mean, what are we supposed to expect out of this team? I mean, you have a couple guys that have played some higher levels. A lot of guys. I mean, half this team plays for Riga Latvia's team in their top league over there. I mean, what are we expecting out of the Latvians in this tournament?
Good conditioning. Because they've been playing against older and stronger competition, so I think that's good. I believe they beat Germany 5-1 in an exhibition game, yesterday, which a good sign on that part of the team there. I think I've kind of just the way they played in that game just kind of really started to get me a bit more excited because I was kind of on the fence of this team's just bleh. But this is one where their goaltending will be interesting to see kind of who really emerges as their key guy. Gustav Osterlund, someone I think I'm more of a fan of than a lot of guys are. He's not a big defenseman by any means, but he was, I believe, the top U25 or U20 scorer in the Latvian men's league this year, and he's a defenseman, so not too bad. Daryl Sturkers, strong kid, good season in the Swiss U20 league. Played some exhibition games with the U18 team last year. Didn't look out of place as a younger guy there. And Martin Slavins is probably the team's top centerman there. Very good at the U18 team a year ago. So they've got players. They are humans. They exist. I'm just. It's not really competition when you get Canada and Sweden in the group. Could they go out there and beat Switzerland? Maybe. I don't think so. But they're really going to have to grind their way in. It'll be obviously deciding if they're going to make the quarterfinals. They'll have to worry about Belarus in that situation there and Switzerland. But Latvia is just a team I'm not too excited about. It's Latvia.
By the way, that's the big matchup this week. Not Canada versus Sweden, not Switzerland versus Canada. No, folks. Latvia, Belarus. That'll be the 8 o'clock local time game on Thursday night, 9 o'clock Eastern time. That's the big game of pool play. Steven, don't tell me any different.
Well, who else is playing at that exact same time in the other?
I only got the A pool. I guarantee you it's probably like the United States, probably playing Russia. Probably that's how it would be. I don't have the full schedule right in front of me.
I'm trying to bring it up myself. USA and Czech Republic.
No, so possibly. Hey, I'll say 2 competitive games at the same time, possibly.
With very different meanings.
Yes, very different meanings.
One's trying to cement first place in the group, and the other's trying to not be last.
No, the other's not trying to get relegated. And let's go to the last team here, Steven. This was obviously just complete by chance that this team was put last here on the show today. Team Canada. What do you want to know about this team? You have Brant Clark, probably the best player to come out of the Ontario Hockey League. Mason McTavish, who plays for Peterborough, but he's been making some hay overseas. Dylan Gunther, Cole Sillinger, Carson Lambos. Cole Sillinger, who was messing around in the USHL, making those kids look bad this year with Sioux Falls. Brennan Othman, who played overseas. He was with Flint. Carson Kuhlemans and Francisco Pinelli. But we got to, of course, mention the elephants in the room. The two probably best players on this team, 15-year-old Connor Bedard and 16-year-old Shane Wright, rookies of the year in their respective leagues. I know it's not official yet for Connor Bedard, but let's be honest here. He's going to get the WHL Rookie of the Year. This team is stacked.
Now, the last I heard, because Sillinger didn't play yesterday, sounds like there might be a situation a COVID situation from
another one.
It would be such a shame if that's the case. Of course, here we are in 2021. Yay. But yeah, this team sucks. No. This team
is awful. They're going to lose to Belarus and Latvia.
They crushed Finland for a reason. You look at that line of Shane Wright and Brennan Ottman, and I'm so glad, just as a fan of the game of hockey, being able to see those guys play together again. I wrote a story for the Hockey News on Friday. If you didn't follow them with the Don Mills Flyers, that team did not lose a game. They won 77 games. They lost, or I shouldn't say, they didn't lose a game in regulation, lost one overtime game, and they had 6 ties. That team was outstanding, one of the best minor midget teams we've ever seen, and they had to do it after losing their goalie to a vicious murder. It was a very sad situation, and this team rallied around. Shane Wright and Brennan Ottman almost combined for 300 points that season, with Brant Clark getting like 113 himself on the point. So to see Clark being able to pass to Wright and Ottman again is going to be special. It's so cool to see that. Dylan Gunther's obviously a very good player. Started off really hot. Went to the WHL over 2 points per game, I believe. Chase Stillman, I think, is a really good winger that doesn't get a lot of attention. Brett Harrison, very same thing. If your fourth line is what we're looking at potentially of Connor Roulette, Danny Zhilkin, or Ryan Winterton, whoa, that is some pretty good depth there.
Russian-born Danny Zhilkin, by the way. Moscow-born Danny Zhilkin.
Yes, so he did choose the Team Canada route. I made a bold prediction on the Hockey News podcast that Francesco Pinelli is going to be the top scorer on the team, mostly because I just really like that third line. If you got Stankoven on your third line too, like
yes, because Connor Bedard's going to be an afterthought, right?
That's the thing. It's like there's a lot of players on the team could be really big, and if, like, usually I always caution people to getting too excited about these young guys playing here. Like Shane Wright, I did not think had a chance of making the final World Junior team for Canada. He didn't. It was there for the experience. I think he and Bedard will both be there next year. But Bedard, it's like, I'm fully confident this guy is going to do so much for this team. And if he's not your top line player, and you got Pinelli on your third line, and you got Stankin on your third line, that's depth. My question is, who is going to be the goalie when we're all said and done here? Goudreau looks like the guy that has the best potential, but Tyler Brennan was playing out of his mind before the tournament began. So I don't know who's going to be the number one guy there. I wrote in my preview, I do think Goudreau will maybe be on a short leash, but give him the chance to prove himself. But this team is just going to be really hard to beat.
It's so deep and so talented, and it was 296 points between. As you mentioned, with Shane Wright and I hit that with Othman.
Brendan Othman
there, yep. And just that team was incredible. And I'm going to mention this during the broadcast this week. I'm going to say it. I and Cody Jansen of World Hockey Report did not believe Connor Bedard was going to do anything. We thought that because the WHL is arguably the toughest of the 3 leagues to play in for any rookie, let alone a 15-year-old kid. Not like Connor Bedard standing head and shoulders above everybody. He's, he's not the biggest guy. He's standing only at, he's only 5'10", $157. We thought he's going to get tossed around like it's Spike Dudley against Brock Lesnar. I mean, this is going to be but then he comes out and just starts racking up points, and we're like, okay, we were wrong. And I'm okay with saying that because he's so good and so talented.
Yeah, he's a special player for a reason. That like age 11, we're talking about this kid. He's that good of a player, just so dominant in the puck. The one thing that was explained to me in a skills camp that I got to watch, where Shane Wright and Connor Bedard are two of the star players in this program. One of the coaches said, if Shane Wright is Sidney Crosby, Connor Bedard is Connor McDavid. That's a lot of pressure to put on these kids. These kids don't care about the pressure. I will share a funny story that Bedard actually shared with Ken Campbell of the Hockey News. When we were talking with him a couple weeks ago, and Ken asked, so it's like, what were your, like, making the U18 team, what are your thoughts? He's like, well, like, the day before the tournament, or before I found out I made the team, I had no idea what the U18 championship was. He had never heard of it.
What? How?
Yeah, he had no idea what the U18 World Championship was until like the day before he got announced for the team.
Does he know?
Someone had to explain, hey, you're probably going to make this team.
Does he know there's a World Junior Championships? Does he know that there's a World
He
Championships?
does.
Okay.
But like, I was shocked to hear that. But this is considering how good of a player this is. Like, you would think someone would be telling him about it. But
should you tell him that he's going to be part of the U17 challenge next year? Should we tell him that?
hey, dude, you can play in the U18s again. You know, like you're that good of a player. So that part was pretty funny, but just a pure talent. So much to love about his game. And again, like I've always been hesitant to get really excited about these younger guys at these tournaments. We saw what Connor McDavid was able to do in 2013 when Canada won gold. This is Canada's best chance of winning gold since that tournament, and they don't even need the QMJHL players. That's just how good of a group this is. So I'm excited about it, and like I know I'm Canadian, and like I kind of had some down thoughts in the Americans. I think if you put these two teams together, Canada's got the better talent, but this is we're also if we're looking at the Americans, they got the chemistry, they know how to play with each other, and that really matters in a tournament like this where you got to spend. If you're Canada, you're spending the first few games trying to figure out your lines first, like officially. They only started training a couple days ago together. There's still a lot of figuring out. USA Hockey, they don't have to worry about that. They're ready to go immediately. So I'm looking forward to see what happens with both those teams.
At least Canada, like we mentioned, Canada probably has the easier pool, despite that game against possibly Belarus. Who knows about that possibly?
It's a tough one. I would say I would really make sure you're watching it. What was it? The World Championship, the men's tournament. It's like Canada and Finland finished, or they play their last game of the round robin at like 5 a.m. Eastern time, and it's like, okay, first off, if you're in Western Canada, you're definitely not watching that game. But it's like that could decide who wins.
Well, no, not if you're at the bar late enough.
Well, you know, there's
you're
not
not getting up. You're going to bed watching that game.
Yeah. If you're like don't have to work that day on a Tuesday or whatever it was, but yeah, that's gonna be a really tough one. But it's like, man, you think you could move that game to the afternoon, right? Like you could put the European teams, full European matches up at that time of the day, but no, Latvia gets the better time slot because they're hosting the tournament and everything. But this tournament, the U18s are going to be so exciting, and Canada, this is a good chance for them to go for gold this time.
And that's the bummer because TSN does a great job. Of course, they got the deal with Hockey Canada, and now TSN seemingly going to be getting the rights to CHL next year. So TSN will pretty much have a firm grasp on junior hockey. But in the States, like, you never see the World Championships unless it's like maybe the final if the U.S. is in it on NHL Network. Like there was one year it was on NBC Sports, but like the coverage for this tournament, I mean, and this is not a knock on NHL Network or anything like that, but I mean it's on Hockey TV the first round. I know TSN's taking over. Are they doing any coverage for it this year, Steven, or no?
They're doing all Team Canada games, and then I think just battle round games.
Okay, because I know Brian Mudryk, guest of the show, friend of the show, he's done it in the past. I know he had done his last game with the Habs, so I wonder he's probably getting ready for this tournament, possibly, maybe.
If he's doing it, he's one of my favorite in hockey, and I love when he does these tournaments.
Oh, dude, Mudryk is, and God bless him, we both jinxed the Habs because we both said the Habs were playing well, and then they went on that skid that ended up getting Julian fired, so we both feel bad about that. But, I mean, it sucks that he had to miss that time because of the Brier and the Scotties, because he missed quite a few games calling games with the Habs, but he's one of my favorites too. And with Cuthbert moving to Sportsnet, him and Gord are probably the two best on TSN.
It's weird. Like I never really put it into perspective, but Gord's main thing during the year is like doing Leaf regional games, which I get on TV.
And sense.
Like,
he does sense too.
Yeah, it does sense. But it's like, man, you gotta utilize this guy more. But I love that he does the international tournaments. And a really good friend of mine, Victor Finley's been filling in on Sens games recently too. And he hopes to do one of these tournaments in the future. And I feel like he'll be someone you'll hear about at the U18s doing commentary. But this is a tournament that you want any TV coverage it gets. World Championship for men's, obviously, it's not huge in the United States, and part of that is just the team's never really that great.
Jimmy Howard's a shiny goaltender every year.
I'm curious, based off of rumors I've heard, like, would they actually legitimately send a U18 team this year?
You know what? I mean,
they could.
Who else you got? I mean, the NHLers can't play because even the guys that are out of the tournament, out of the playoff hunt, they're still playing, and it's just you may as well or give the kids a shot, or maybe any of the college kids that maybe want to skate one more time. Shoot, when you want to see Matty Beniers and Owen Power in the World Championships.
Here's the thing: even if Canada goes and ices an actual men's pro team, two guys I think you will see there: Brant Clark and Shane Wright. Shane Wright just solely to keep getting him into games because it's been a total lost year for him. But Brant Clark, he played well in Slovakia. he's one of the top prospects of the 2021 draft. You want him playing. I would, if they those are situations where I wouldn't be shocked if they send the U18 teams.
Is there an age min on that tournament? Because I know like some people say it's got to be 17 or 18. Is that true?
I don't think so. I think because because you'll see guys like Marco Rossi played for Austria in. Actually, no. Good question. Actually, I don't know.
I've seen 17-year-olds play, but I've never seen like Shane Wright would go. Yeah.
I think it's 6. I think it's whatever it is for the U20s also apply to the for the men's world championships. But I can't be quoted on that. I don't totally. We've never had to be in a situation where we're talking Canada and USA having to send junior teams. So that's just my excuse there.
That's true. Well, this has been a fun episode. Now, I know not as long as the usual ones, guys, but it's a Sunday. I have to get work done. Steven's got stuff to do, so we'll do another show next Sunday. Maybe just me, maybe Steven. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Because unfortunately, I'm broadcasting games during our usual time slot Monday night. So, but for now, thank you very much, Steven, for joining us once again here on the Kuehl Show. Follow him at Steven Ellis, THN. Check out all his great work over there for the Hockey News. He doesn't just do prospects, guys. He does NHL stuff, too. He does everything over there for the Hockey News. All the great guys, Ken Campbell and co. They do a great work over there. Maybe not as much of the print news as it used to be, but it's online. You can get it all the time. Everyone's got one of these NSA tracking devices. You can go look on it there on the Hockey News. Steven, thanks again for taking the time, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, and that is it for this one. Check us out one more time. Hashtag TKS at The Kuehl Show, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Check out the replay tomorrow if you were not able to watch this entire episode. But that is it. I'm Tyler Kuehl saying goodbye, and we'll see you next time on The Kuehl Show.